Right, so yeah, we've got, so this equation, x squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. So what I was saying earlier on is that if I draw a box around this, it's weird actually, I'm looking at my screen while I'm drawing the box. I could be looking at the piece of paper, that makes more sense. I'll do that. So what I'm saying is that x squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. I'm going to take this expression that's in the red box, in the red rectangle, and I'm going to rearrange it. The way that I'm going to rearrange it is by using factorization. Okay, I'm going to factorize it. And when this method works only, by the way, for a quadratic equation where we only have one x squared. If it was 2x squared or 3 or whatever, any amount of other x squared, this method would not work. So this is like the first step you learn when you're doing quadratic equations, when the number of x squareds is 1. So what we do is we look for two numbers that when we multiply them by minus 8, when we multiply them by each other, say that again, we're looking for two numbers that when we multiply them by each other we get negative 8, but when we add them we give negative 2. The thing, by the way, just to be clear, what I want to focus on in this video is this thing that I call the autopilot. So I'm not really going to go too much in detail about how to factorize these quadratics. But yeah, so the minus 2 and so we're looking for two numbers that give us minus 2 when we add them, and times to give negative 8. So those two numbers are minus 4 and plus 2. So this is what happened when the autopilot came online. You did that and that, and then done. That's, you just went to the next question. That was the first thing that you did wrong. We're slowly trying to break away from this autopilot. The reason why I say this is autopilot is because the question asked you to solve the equation. You've not solved it. You've just started to do the question. So you've kind of gone through the motions of what you remember doing in class, and then you thought, oh, we just do this. That's the bit that's kind of tricky. That's the bit that takes a while to get the hang of, but it's not the whole question. You factorized it, but that is the thing in the red rectangle, so that's also equal to 0. Now if that's equal to 0, then either x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x plus 2 is equal to 0. By breaking it down in these step-by-step processes, instead of just speeding through it and getting to the answer, we're trying to destroy the autopilot and make sure that we understand the reasons why we can say what we're saying. So why is all that equal to 0? Why is it true that either this is equal to 0 or that is equal to 0? Because the only way that you can multiply something, in this case we're multiplying this by this, the only way when you multiply two numbers to get 0 is if one of them is equal to 0, or possibly both of them. We can't have them both equal to 0 this time. We'll see in a moment why, but certainly one of them can be equal to 0. So what I'm saying is either x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x plus 2 is equal to 0. I think in future what I'm going to do is this little stand that holds the camera, I'm going to get it to hang on to something that I'm not writing, because it's moving around when I write, isn't it? So x minus 4 is equal to 0. Well, if that was the case, the only way that could be true is if x is equal to 4. Or if you like, I can just rearrange, add 4 to both sides, I have x is equal to 4. X plus 2 is equal to 0, well therefore x must be equal to negative 2. So it's these kind of explanations that how, whilst you might have got there and gone bam straight to that in like 3 seconds if you've done quadratics for a while, But what we've got to do to make sure that we keep track of what's going on and why it's happening, and we don't let the autopilot take over, is it's important to understand the reasons why we go from each step. The only thing I didn't explain, actually, if you listen carefully, if you follow along carefully, is I didn't explain why it is that in the red rectangle is equal to this bit here. So if I draw a rectangle around this bit here, I'm saying that the things inside those two red rectangles are identical to each other. Now, I didn't explain the reasons why, I just told you how to do it. And the reason why is because it's complicated a bit, really. It's not that complicated, but I could probably do that in a different video. So if we're familiar with how to do that, how to factorize a quadratic expression, an expression is just without the equal sign, that would be a quadratic expression, that's a quadratic equation. So when I factorize the expression, then essentially I've just rearranged it, I've changed it into something else which is identical, and so therefore it's also equal to 0. But then this bit here, over here, well, that's because of the thing I was saying when I said if A times B is equal to 0. It's a bit blurry, I can't work out how to make it not blurry. If A times B is equal to 0, I'll move it up there, then either A is equal to 0 or B is equal to 0, because the only way that I can get 0 is by multiplying when I multiply these two mystery numbers, is if one of them is actually 0, right? And that's the same here. So in this case, I guess the A in my example up here is what the x minus 4 is, and the B would be the x plus 2. Okay, so yeah, so those steps are very important in all types of, especially algebra, but maths in general, because if they throw something at you that's a bit different, then it could catch you out. And also the autopilot, as we saw, can lead you to lose a lot of marks because you didn't originally actually you didn't answer the question, you didn't solve the equation. Okay, so to defeat that autopilot, you want to be constantly questioning, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Why is this true? Another really good trick to find the autopilot, and this works more in like physics, and well, physics really, but all the sciences, I suppose, is you get to the answer, you get to the very end, you write the answer, and you say something, I don't know, 5 to the whatever question it is, and then you ask, what's the unit? And if you can't say what the unit is, then that means you've lost track of what it is that you're doing. Because if, for example, the unit's meters per second, that's because you've been working out speed. You might have forgotten that is what you were trying to do. So look out for that as well. Anyway, yeah, that's a little video about autopilot.